We all pursue justice, right? We all pursue love. We all pursue order. But why does humanity's hardest work only seem to fracture the world further?
Yeah, it is the ultimate paradox of the human condition. The harder we try to engineer a perfect society, the more broken it appears to become.
Welcome to this deep dive into the source material. Today, we are looking at something incredibly profound. Because the modern tragedy isn't just our economic instability.
Right.
It isn't just our political division. The deepest tragedy is that we have entirely lost a coherent explanation for how the world actually works. We are navigating a hurricane without a compass.
We are operating without a blueprint. And, when you build without a blueprint, the structure might look impressive for a while, but it eventually collapses under its own weight.
And here is the insight that completely upends our modern assumptions. The things we think are solutions, our exponential technology, our incredibly complex courts of law, our pursuit of absolute limitless personal freedom, they are actually amplifying our collective anxiety.
Yeah, that is a huge face slap moment.
Exactly. They aren't the cure. They are rapidly becoming the disease.
Which is why the text we are examining today is so vital. It doesn't start with ancient dogmas or abstract theological charts. It starts with the echoes in your own mind, the instincts you just can't seem to shake.
Spot on. We are diving into a fascinating text called Simply Christian by the scholar N.T. Wright. Now, Wright tackles some heavily charged stuff here.
He really does. Historical atrocities, modern capitalism, fundamentalism, political movements.
Yeah, and just as a quick caveat for you listening, our job today isn't to take a political stance on any of those issues. Left-wing, right-wing, we are not taking sides.
Absolutely not. We are simply putting Wright's architectural blueprint on the table to see how it works. We are impartially reporting his arguments so you can understand the mechanics of what he's proposing.
Right, we are going to deconstruct societal anxiety by looking at a 2,000-year-old framework. A framework that claims to explain the exact anxieties you are feeling today.
And Wright begins this deconstruction by pointing out a universal human experience, something he calls the echoes of a voice.
Let's pull on that thread right away. Think about a toddler who has never read a single book on philosophy.
Never studied ethics or sociology.
Right. Yet, the moment another kid takes their toy, they instinctively cross their arms, stomp their foot, and scream, "That's not fair."
It's a brilliant observation. It highlights that the cry for justice is a birth instinct. It is not a learned behavior socially conditioned into us.
You don't have to sit a child down and explain the concept of fairness.
You really don't. They know it, as Wright says, in their bones. From the sandbox to the international tribunal, we have this inescapable sense that things ought to be a certain way and that they currently are not.
But wait, let's unpack this. If I fall off my bike and break my leg, I go to the hospital. The doctor looks at the x-ray, sets the bone, puts a cast on it, and eventually the leg is completely fixed.
Right, a straightforward mechanical fix.
Exactly. You can fix a broken leg. You can fix a broken engine. But somehow, the most advanced, highly funded, incredibly complex judicial systems on planet Earth cannot eradicate injustice.
Right, uses the legal system of London as a prime example, but you could apply this to Washington, Tokyo, or anywhere else.
Yeah, any major city.
You have lawmakers, law enforcers, sprawling police headquarters, and enough highly trained lawyers to run a battleship. The expenditure on courts is staggering. We pour trillions of dollars into the machinery of justice.
And yet the bullies still get away with it. People who can bribe their way out of trouble still walk free. Victims spend the rest of their lives coping with sorrow and bitterness.
It's incredibly frustrating. The rich use the power of their money to get richer, and the poor get poorer.
So I have to push back here. Are we just inherently bad at writing legal code? Or is there a fundamental bug in the human operating system? Because it seems like if it were just a matter of getting the rules right, we would have figured it out by now.
It strongly implies a bug in the system, doesn't it? Because despite our passion for justice, despite our deep longing that things should be put to rights, true justice constantly slips through our fingers.
We catch glimpses of it, sure.
Oh, definitely. A system of apartheid gets dismantled, a tyrant is overthrown, but just when you think it is safe to relax, it all goes wrong again in a new way.
We dream the dream of justice, but we always wake up to a fractured reality.
Exactly. So if we can't blame our lack of trying, and we can't entirely blame the courts, what happens when there's nobody to blame at all?
Oh, you mean like a natural disaster?
Right, like a massive earthquake or a devastating tsunami. We watch the footage on the news, we see the destruction, and we scream internally, this shouldn't happen.
This brings us to a crucial philosophical distinction. Wright points to the horrific 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, which claimed hundreds of thousands of lives.
A truly massive tragedy.
But that tragedy wasn't caused by a wicked global capitalist. It wasn't caused by a Marxist dictator. It wasn't caused by a religious fundamentalist with a bomb.
No, a tectonic plate just did what a tectonic plate does. It's just geology.
Right. A rock doesn't have malice.
Right.
A wave doesn't have a political agenda.
Exactly. And yet, even when tragedies are completely beyond human control, they make us feel that the world is fundamentally out of joint. Why?
Yeah, why do we get so mad at the dirt?
Well, if we are strictly biological machines living on a rock floating in space, as strict materialism suggests, then a tsunami is nothing more than a neutral redistribution of mass and energy. The universe is just doing its thing.
If materialism is the whole story, getting mad at a tsunami is like getting mad at gravity for making an apple fall. It's absurd.
Precisely. But we don't react to natural disasters with cold, scientific detachment. We react with visceral grief and intense moral outrage.
And this moral outrage at nature implies something profound.
It does. It implies that we have a subconscious memory of a world that was orderly, or perhaps a promise of a world that will be orderly.
We look at the destruction and say, that's not right. It's an echo. It's an echo of a voice saying the world is meant to be put to rights.
But here's where it gets really uncomfortable. When we try to put the world to rights, we usually turn to our favorite modern solution. We try to identify the bad guys and eliminate them.
Oh, we love doing that. We think if we just get rid of the oppressors, the toxic people, the corrupt politicians, the world will finally be peaceful.
But history offers a terrifying counter-narrative. The moment we aim our weapons at the bad guys, we inevitably become the oppressors ourselves.
Wow. Yeah, that is a dark thought.
History is littered with glorious revolutions that overthrew a tyrant, only to establish a new, often significantly bloodier tyranny in its place. The oppressed become the oppressors the moment they seize the levers of power.
Which completely shatters our modern us versus them narrative. We'd love to draw a line between the righteous and the wicked.
But the reality is that the line between justice and injustice isn't a border between nations. It isn't a political aisle.
Borrowing from ancient philosophers and writers like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Wright points out that the line dividing good and evil runs right down the middle of every single human heart.
What's fascinating here is the absolute universality of this failure. I have high moral standards, you have high moral standards, the listener has high moral standards.
We all know what we ought to do. Give or take a few cultural details, humanity generally agrees on basic morality. Don't murder, don't steal, be kind.
And yet we all manage, at least some of the time, to fail to do it. We are the perpetrators of the very injustice we scream about.
We judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions.
That is exactly it.
So our moral compass is broken, we impose morality on tectonic plates, and the evil we want to fight is actually inside our own DNA. No wonder society is vibrating with anxiety.
It's exhausting.
So what did the modern Western world do in response? It turned to materialism. It promised that science, reason, and empirical data would cure us of all this superstition and angst.
Materialism promised that once we discarded the ancient myths, we would finally be happy, rational creatures. But Wright asks us to look around.
Yeah, just look at the state of things.
In our peak technological age, where we have more data and scientific understanding than ever before, spiritual anxiety isn't disappearing. It is exploding.
Why didn't science cure the spiritual itch?
Because you cannot pave over the human soul with concrete. Wright uses a brilliant extended analogy to explain how this happened.
I love this analogy. Walk us through it.
Imagine a powerful dictator who rules his country with an iron will. He wants everything to be perfectly rational and orderly, but the landscape of his country is covered in erratic, natural springs of water bubbling up everywhere.
They are messy, unpredictable. Sometimes they dry up, sometimes they flood the roads.
Right. So the dictator decides on a highly rational, modern policy. He paves over the entire country with thick, impenetrable concrete.
Just totally seals it off.
Completely. No more unregulated springs. Instead, the government pipes in sanitized, tightly controlled water to every house, complete with health-boosting chemicals.
And for a generation, it works beautifully. People praise the dictator for his forward-thinking efficiency.
But, I see where this is going. You can't stop water forever.
Exactly. The underground springs don't just disappear because you poured concrete over them. They build up pressure.
And eventually, the water bursts through the concrete in massive, chaotic explosions.
Muddy, dirty, unregulated water shoots into the air, tearing up the neat, rational roads and causing absolute chaos. and the official government plumbers are standing there entirely at a loss.
That is such a striking image, and it perfectly maps onto our cultural moment. The dictator in the story is the materialistic, secular philosophy that has shaped our Western world for the past 2 centuries.
We were told that religion and spirituality were just private, irrational hobbies.
We were told to keep them in their little subdepartments, and the state would pipe us the rational, scientific water we need to survive.
But humans are fundamentally thirsty for more than just biological survival and economic efficiency. We crave meaning. And so the concrete has burst.
We are seeing an absolute explosion of what we broadly call spirituality, but because it's bursting through the concrete of a secular culture, it's chaotic, it's muddy.
You see this everywhere. You walk into any mainstream bookstore today, and the mind, body, and spirit section is massive.
It's overflowing with astrology, tarot cards, crystal healing, past life regression.
And on the darker side of things, you see a rise in extreme, rigid fundamentalisms. It's all that repressed spiritual energy bursting out in wild, unregulated ways because the official narrative tried to pave it over.
The guardians of the official rational system, the secular intellectuals, are horrified by this. They look at the rise of astrology or New Age wellness cults and say, this is unhealthy, this superstitious nonsense.
But they have to face a hard question. Does the fault not lie with those who wanted to pave over the human soul with concrete in the first place?
We are witnessing the undeniable proof of a hidden spring, a deep, subterranean yearning for the divine that refuses to be suppressed by pure reason.
Okay, so if our spiritual springs are bursting through the concrete and making a mess of things, what happens to our interpersonal lives? This brings us to another massive source of modern anxiety.
We spend billions of dollars on weddings. We crave love and intimate connection more than almost anything else in life.
Look at our movies, our music. It's all about finding the one. So why do we destroy each other with such unprecedented power? Why are our relationships so incredibly fragile?
Ray argues this is because we have adopted a philosophy of total, unconstrained freedom, but we've completely discarded the sacred framework required to support it.
We just want the freedom without the structure.
Right. The modern demand for absolute individual rights has become so shrill, so uncompromising, that it actively destroys the most basic right of all, the hope of having a peaceful, stable, secure, and caring place to live.
That is totally backward to how society teaches us to view freedom. We're taught that the more unbound we are, the happier we will be.
But total freedom without a larger architecture of meaning doesn't lead to liberation. It leads to an empty transactional existence. Wow. Yeah.
When you remove the sacred dimension from human connection, bodies are reduced to mere tools for personal gratification. Sex is downgraded from a profound union to a mere recreational toy.
You see this in modern dating. The swiping apps have completely gamified human connection.
Oh, absolutely.
We browse through human beings like we are shopping for shoes online, looking for the perfect fit that demands the least amount of compromise from us.
Exactly. Wright points out that humans are fundamentally designed for relationship with each other, with the created order, and ultimately with the creator.
But when you sever the creator from the equation, you put an impossible burden on your human relationships.
You end up demanding that your romantic partner fulfill a divine role. You demand they provide your ultimate meaning, your total fulfillment, your existential security.
And no human being can bear that weight. They will inevitably fail you. The statistics bear this out with grim clarity. We have a massive relationship deficit in the modern world.
Homes and families are tearing themselves apart. The gentle, vital arts of kindness, forgiveness, humility, and long-suffering have gone entirely out of fashion, because they require us to sacrifice our absolute autonomy.
We yearn for the perfect relationship. We say we are made for each other, but without the blueprint of how relationships are meant to function within a larger, sacred reality, we end up calling the divorce lawyers.
We are made for relationship, yet all relationships end in death, and many end in bitter tears long before that.
Which again feels like a cruel cosmic joke, unless it is yet another echo.
An echo of a voice reminding us of what we were originally designed for but have lost. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating echoes Wright discusses, the experience of beauty.
If beauty is just an evolutionary trick to help us find nutritious food, or identify a healthy mate with symmetrical features, why does a spectacular sunset trigger a profound sense of homesickness?
It's the paradox of awe. True beauty is breathtaking, yet it always leaves us strangely unsatisfied.
It presents a haunting dilemma. We climb the mountain, we see the magnificent view, But instead of just feeling content, it leaves us wanting something more, something we can't quite name.
We photograph the sunset, but the photo doesn't capture the ache we felt in our chest while watching it.
Wright uses a beautiful story to illustrate how this works mechanically. Imagine you are rummaging through a dusty old attic in a European city, and you find a lost, handwritten musical manuscript by Mozart.
Ah, what a find. You'd be thrilled.
You are thrilled. You take it downstairs to a piano and start to play it. The melody is glorious. It's unmistakably the work of a genius. But as you play, a profound frustration sets in.
Why is that?
You realize it's just the piano part.
Oh, wow. It's missing the rest of the orchestra.
It's brilliant, but it is clearly missing the other instruments. As you play the keys, you can almost hear the gaps where the oboe should be weaving in, where the strings should swell and take over the melody.
So the piano part is beautiful, but by itself it is frustratingly incomplete. It is a signpost pointing to a larger unfinished whole.
And that is exactly what beauty is in our world. We have the piano part of creation.
The sunset, the symphony, the profound, elegant simplicity of a mathematical equation, it points to a larger, unfinished masterpiece.
If we just adopt the modern secular view and say, well, beauty is just neurons firing in the brain, it's just in the eye of the beholder, we reduce it to nothing. We dismiss the ache.
But if we say it's an echo, a fragment of a larger truth, suddenly the world makes a lot more sense.
This raises the ultimate question of everything we've discussed so far. If the human passion for justice, our unquenchable thirst for spirituality, our desperate hunger for intimate relationship, and our aching delight in beauty are all just echoes, who is speaking?
Who is the composer of this incomplete symphony? And where are they?
Okay, this is where we have to shift gears. We've deconstructed the human condition. We've looked at the brokenness, the anxiety, the echoes.
Now, we need to look at the actual blueprint Wright is proposing. We are moving from the echoes to the mechanics of the divine. And I want to warn you, the biblical narrative is radically, geometrically strange compared to our modern assumptions.
It requires a fundamental spatial shift in our thinking. To understand how Wright says the world actually works, we have to look at the three geometries of space.
Modern people basically have two default settings when they think about God, and Wright argues that both are deadly philosophical traps.
Let's unpack option one, which is pantheism. This is the idea that God is everything and everything is God.
If you think about it visually, you slide the space of heaven and the space of earth entirely together until they're the exact same circle.
This is incredibly popular today, especially in Western interpretations of Eastern philosophies. The idea that divinity is a cosmic force permeating everything.
You hear people talk about manifesting or the universe providing. The idea is that you are divine, the trees are divine, the river is divine.
It sounds very inclusive, very democratic, and very peaceful.
But there is a massive fatal flaw here. If everything is divine, then the cancer cell destroying a child's body is divine.
Exactly.
The 2004 tsunami that killed hundreds of thousands of people is divine. The wasp, the mosquito, the murderer, the corrupt politician, they all share equally in the divine nature.
That's the trap. If God is just the sum total of everything that exists, there is no higher court of appeal. You can't cry out for justice because whatever happens is the divine will.
God can't rescue you from the world because God is the world. You're trapped in a closed system.
So, realizing that pantheism has a huge problem with evil, modern people usually swing all the way to the opposite side. Option two, deism.
Deism is the spatial opposite. Instead of sliding the circles together, it pulls them firmly apart.
God's space and our space are separated by a massive, unbridgeable gulf. God is the distant clockmaker who wound up the universe, established the laws of physics, and then walked away.
He's up in his heaven, wherever that is, and we are down here on earth, left to our own devices. This sounds a lot like the default view of many people who consider themselves vaguely religious today.
Yeah, it really does.
But what is the mechanical flaw here?
If God is infinitely far away, the only way he can interact with us is by breaking into our world like an alien invader. This requires miracles interventions that disrupt the natural order, suspended laws of physics.
And if he only intervenes occasionally, it leaves us feeling completely abandoned the other 99.9% of the time.
Right. If God is so far away, why should we bother praying? Why does he stop one car crash but allow a genocide? It paints God as arbitrary and distant.
Okay, so if sliding the spaces together makes God responsible for cancer and pulling them apart makes him an absentee landlord, what is the actual biblical view?
Option three. The biblical view is that heaven and earth are not the same thing. Nor are they separated by a massive gulf. They are overlapping and interlocking dimensions.
Wait, I have to stop you there. Overlapping dimensions. That sounds more like a Marvel movie multiverse than ancient theology.
It sounds wild, doesn't it?
It really does. How did a first-century farmer conceptualize overlapping dimensions?
Well, they didn't use the word dimensions, but their entire worldview was built on this overlapping geometry. Heaven is God's space. Earth is our space. They are different in nature, but they were designed to intersect.
The entire story of the Bible is the story of these two spaces temporarily overlapping at specific points, and God's ultimate plan to merge them together permanently.
Give me a concrete example of how they understood this overlap.
In the ancient Israelite worldview, the primary place where these two dimensions overlapped was the temple in Jerusalem.
When a Jewish pilgrim traveled to the temple, they didn't believe they were just standing in a nice limestone building where people thought about God.
No. They believed they were standing at the precise GPS coordinate where heaven and earth intersected. To walk into the temple was to step into heaven while still standing on earth.
That is a wild concept. So the temple is a portal, but the ultimate goal wasn't just to have one building act as a portal. God wants to fix the whole world.
He wants to bring heaven and earth back together entirely after the rebellion of humanity. How does he do it? If he's not a distant clockmaker who can just snap his fingers from afar,
Right.
what is the mechanism of rescue?
This brings us to the core of the biblical narrative, the crashed rescue boat. If the world is a drowning ship, God's plan isn't to magically teleport everyone to safety. His plan is to send a rescue boat into the chaotic waters.
And who is the rescue boat?
The family of Abraham, the nation of Israel. God calls Abraham and makes a specific covenant with him.
Through Abraham's family, God intends to rescue the entire world and put it back to rights.
They are supposed to be the model of what it looks like when humans live in the overlapping space, reflecting God's love and justice to the rest of the world.
But anyone who has read the Old Testament knows this doesn't go smoothly. In fact, the rescue boat crashes on the rocks almost immediately.
Yes. The profound tragedy of the biblical story is that the rescuers become infected with the very problem they were sent to cure. The people chosen to be the solution become part of the problem.
Abraham's family repeatedly fails. They rebel. They fracture into civil war.
They end up as slaves in Egypt. God miraculously rescues them in the Exodus, brings them to the Promised Land, and they fail again.
They demand a human king so they can be like the violent nations around them. The kings become corrupt, the nation splits, and eventually they are conquered and sent into exile in Babylon.
I want to linger on this concept of exile because it perfectly sets up the arrival of Jesus. Eventually, the Babylonian Empire falls. The Persians take over and decree that the Jews can go home.
They physically return to Jerusalem. They rebuild the physical temple. If you're just looking at a historical timeline, you'd think, great, story over. The exile has ended. They are back in the overlapping space.
But if you read the texts written by the Jewish people during that period, you realize the true exile hadn't ended at all. They wrote things like, "We are slaves in our own land."
Yes, they were physically home, but they were still living under the successive, crushing thumbs of massive pagan empires. First Persia, then Greece, then Syria, then Rome.
So the grand promises of God, the prophecies that the world would be put to rights, that the wolf would lie down with the lamb, that global justice would reign, none of that had happened.
The rescue boat was still stranded on the rocks. The people were waiting for a king, a Messiah who would arrive with overwhelming force, violently overthrow Rome, establish perfect justice, and finally bring heaven and earth together in a permanent, undeniable way.
Which perfectly sets up the arrival of Jesus. But Jesus completely subverts their expectations. The world in the first century, much like the world today, exclusively trusted the currency of violence.
If you want power, you take it with a sword. The Jews were expecting a military Messiah to violently crush the Roman Empire and liberate Israel.
So how does a penniless rabbi, riding into town on a donkey, proposing that people love their enemies, manage to overthrow the spiritual grip of the Roman Empire?
Because Jesus recognized something fundamental that the revolutionaries of his day missed. He didn't come to fight a conventional war against Rome because Rome wasn't the ultimate problem.
Rome was just a symptom. The real enemy was the cosmic power of evil, the deep underlying corruption that causes all human rebellion, injustice, and suffering.
I have to put myself in the shoes of a first-century zealot listening to Jesus. I'm oppressed by Roman soldiers. They are taxing me into poverty. They are crucifying my friends.
Yeah, you're looking for a warrior.
Right. I go to listen to this supposed Messiah, and he preaches the Sermon on the Mount. He says, "Blessed are the meek, turn the other cheek, Love your enemies.
To me, that sounds like a surrender. It sounds like an absolute suicide mission. Why would anyone follow a leader who refuses to pick up a sword against a brutal occupying force?
Because Jesus was redefining what victory actually looked like based on the mechanics of evil. If you fight violence with violence, what do you get?
You just create more violence.
Exactly. You might overthrow the Romans, but in doing so, you become the new Rome. You become the oppressor.
It's the dividing line of evil we talked about earlier. You can't cure the disease by spreading it. Jesus chose a radically different tactic. He chose to let the powers of evil do their absolute worst to him.
He steps right into the crosshairs. He makes himself a lightning rod.
Precisely. And he does it with incredible deliberate timing. Jesus deliberately provokes the authorities by riding into Jerusalem at Passover.
Passover is the most politically volatile festival of the year. It's the festival where the Jews celebrate being rescued from the Egyptian Empire. The Roman guards are on high alert for riots.
And what does Jesus do? He goes to the temple and predicts its destruction.
This is the ultimate provocation. We just established that the temple was the center of their universe. It was the portal where heaven and earth overlapped. Why would Jesus predict its destruction?
Because he was replacing the building with himself. He was permanently altering the spatial structure of humanity.
Wait, explain the mechanics of that. How does a person replace a building as a dimension portal?
By claiming to be the embodiment of Israel's God returning to his people. Jesus was essentially saying that physical overlap, that intersection of heaven and earth, it is no longer a building of stone and animal sacrifices in Jerusalem. It is me. I am the new temple.
He was claiming to be the actual living place where God's dimension and our dimension meet.
And then he allows himself to be arrested, beaten, and crucified. On the cross, we see the ultimate subversion of power.
Jesus takes the concentrated violence, the injustice, the mockery, and the physical pain of the world, and he absorbs it into himself.
He doesn't strike back. He doesn't call down armies of angels to slaughter the Romans. He exhausts the kinetic energy of evil.
Evil bankrupts itself by spending all its energy on him is the ultimate reversal.
Think back to the rescue boat. The lifeboat goes out to rescue the drowning sailor, and the captain drowns in the process. The pain, the injustice, the tears of all the years meet on Calvary.
The forgiving love stored up in God's future is poured out into the present.
It's a breathtaking narrative. But at this point in the story, what do we have? We have a dead king, a crashed rescue boat, a shattered temple.
It looks like total, unmitigated defeat. The Romans won again.
If the story ended on Friday, yes, but it didn't. And that brings us to the most crucial and most misunderstood mechanic in Wright's entire framework, the shocking resurrection.
I want to spend some time here because we have to correct a massive, deeply ingrained misconception. Most people, even many modern Christians, think the goal of Christianity is going to heaven when you die.
Yeah, that's the popular view.
The idea is that you endure this miserable, broken earth, and when you die, your soul evacuates your physical body, floats up to the clouds, and you play a harp in a disembodied spiritual realm forever.
That view is actually much closer to ancient Greek philosophy, specifically Platonism, than it is to the Bible. The biblical narrative is not about us evacuating earth to go to heaven. It's about heaven coming to earth.
That completely flips the script.
It does. When the first century Jews talked about resurrection, they didn't mean life after death. They meant life after death.
They meant a new physical body in a renewed physical world.
So when Jesus walked out of the tomb on Easter morning, it wasn't just his soul surviving death. It wasn't a near-death experience, and it wasn't a ghostly apparition.
It was God launching a brand new physical creation right in the middle of the old decaying one.
Jesus brought a new physical reality back to this world. The accounts say he ate fish, he could be touched, yet he could appear in locked rooms. He had a transformed physical body.
This is crucial because it proves that matter, space, and time are inherently good. The physical world isn't some evil, dirty thing to be escaped. It is a good thing destined for renewal.
The resurrection is the ultimate proof that the physical world matters deeply to God.
And if the physical world matters, then what we do in it matters. We aren't just killing time waiting for the rapture. We are supposed to be participating in this new creation right now.
Which brings us to a very practical question. How does this cosmic historical event connect to us today, living in the 21st century? How does it help with our modern anxiety?
Wright says the connection happens through what the biblical text calls the Holy Spirit.
Now, people often treat the Holy Spirit like a cozy, private, emotional blanket. a warm, fuzzy feeling you get during a particularly moving song, or a sense of inner peace when you meditate.
But Wright paints a much more volatile picture. He calls the spirit a down payment on the future.
Yes, Wright uses the analogy of tectonic plates again, but this time in a positive, constructive sense. When someone embraces this framework and receives the spirit, they are placed exactly at the friction point.
The friction point where the plate of heaven grinds against the plate of earth, and where the plate of the future new creation grinds against the present broken world.
So, if you accept this worldview, you aren't signing up for a life of tranquil escape. You must prepare for earthquakes.
You don't get to just retreat to a mountaintop monastery and ignore the suffering of the world. You, the individual and the community of believers, are now the living temple. You are the portal where heaven and earth intersect.
And that portal generates a radically new kind of community. Think about human sociology. We are a naturally selfish, deeply tribal species.
We constantly divide ourselves by race, class, nationality, and language. So how did a movement started by a crucified Jewish peasant build a network that spans 2,000 years and entirely erases those cultural borders?
It's incredible when you look at the history of the early church. They did the absolute unthinkable in the ancient world. They used the metaphor of a single great river formed from tens of thousands of scattered tributaries.
They welcomed non-Jews, Gentiles, Romans, Greeks, slaves, free people, men, women into the family of Abraham without making them adopt Jewish ethnic markers.
This cannot be overstated. In the ancient world, religion and ethnicity were completely intertwined. Your gods were the gods of your city, your tribe.
To separate religion from ethnicity, to create a transnational, transethnic family bound together solely by their allegiance to a crucified and risen king, was a revolutionary concept.
It was the birth of a radical new humanity. It was a network of living temples, intersecting heaven and earth all over the globe.
But humans are forgetful. We lose the plot easily. How did this network sustain itself? How did they keep this mind-bending reality of overlapping dimensions alive week after week, century after century, especially under intense persecution?
They sustained it through specific time-bending rituals. We have to talk about sacraments, specifically the Eucharist or communion.
To the modern materialistic eye, eating a tiny piece of bread and drinking a sip of wine is just an empty ritual. A nice, quiet symbol to remember a dead teacher.
But within the framework we've been discussing, option 3, the overlapping geometry sacraments are dimensional collisions.
We have to understand the ancient Jewish concept of time and memory. When a Jewish family celebrated Passover, they didn't just mentally recall that God freed their ancestors from Egypt centuries ago.
The ritual was designed to bring the past event crashing into the present. They believed that by participating in the meal, they were personally experiencing the liberation of the Exodus in that exact moment. The past became present.
So Jesus takes that incredibly loaded Passover meal and he maps his own impending death and future kingdom onto it. He says, "Do this in remembrance of me."
But it's not just a mental memory. When practicing communion, the past, the exodus from Egypt and the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross in the future, the new creation and the great heavenly banquet crash together in the present moment.
You are sitting at a table in your local church, and suddenly the veil of time is pulled back. Your great-great-grandparents who practice this faith and your great-great-grandchildren who will practice it are spiritually sitting there with you.
God's time is not strictly linear in the way our biological clocks are. The sacrament is a thin place.
I love that phrase, a thin place. So a normal Sunday morning is actually a sci-fi level event. You aren't just sitting through a boring lecture and eating a stale cracker. You are stepping into a spatial anomaly where dimensions cross.
You are participating in the architecture of the cosmos.
Which leads perfectly to the practical application of all of this. If heaven and earth are overlapping, if the future of God's perfect justice and love is bleeding into the present through the Spirit and the sacraments, what is our job? What do we actually do on a Monday morning?
The dawn has broken, but the darkness is still fighting back. We see it every day on the news. The echoes of injustice and pain are still loud.
But the core viewpoint Wright is driving at is that you are invited to stop being a cold, anxious spectator. You are invited into the project.
The arts, justice work, healing broken relationships, scientific discovery, caring for the poor. These are not just nice things to do to pass the time until we die and go to a disembodied heaven.
They are actual construction projects for the new creation. When you fight for fair housing in your city, when you paint a masterpiece, when you forgive a friend who deeply betrayed you, you're planting the future in the present.
You are taking the blueprint of the new creation and building a piece of it right here, right now, out of the raw materials of your daily life.
You are echoing the voice of the Creator. You are answering the toddler's cry for justice. You are quenching the modern thirst for true spirituality. You are mending the collapse of human connection. You are completing the symphony of beauty.
Because the physical resurrection of Jesus proves that nothing done in love, nothing done in the pursuit of true justice or genuine beauty is ever wasted or lost to the void.
It is all gathered up, preserved by God, and will be gloriously reaffirmed and integrated into the final renewal of all things.
So as we bring this incredibly dense, deep dive to a close, let's slow the pace down for a second. We started by talking about those echoes in your mind.
The toddler crying for fairness in a fundamentally unfair world. The heartbreak of a failed romance when you swore you were made for each other.
The awe of a mountain range that leaves you feeling small and homesick. The deep, unexplainable spiritual thirst in a world paved over with secular concrete.
Those echoes aren't just ghosts of a broken past. They aren't evolutionary misfires, and they aren't just psychological coping mechanisms to help you deal with the void.
They are the music of a future world bleeding into ours.
You've been listening to these echoes your whole life. Every time you felt outraged by unfairness, every time you felt empty, despite having everything society said would make you happy, every time a piece of music brought you to unexpected tears.
What if those aren't just biological misfires? What if that is the composer of the universe handing you your sheet music and asking you to finally pick up your instrument and join the symphony?
Embracing this blueprint changes everything about how you view your daily life. The mundane tasks become infused with cosmic significance.
The struggle for order and love is no longer a futile, exhausting fight against the inevitable entropy of the universe. It is an active participation in the ultimate victory.
We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the courts of London to the ancient temple in Jerusalem, from the mechanics of time bending to the ultimate hope of a renewed physical world.
We are incredibly excited for you to explore these concepts further on your own, to test them against the anxieties of the modern world.
Keep listening for those echoes.
Yeah.
Until next time.